This video is presented by Sailrite. We'll be building a loose frame awning with a scalloped edge in this video. We're going to show you how to do the pipe work and what hardware to purchase, and also how to build the canopy awning cover. Let's get started and show you how. First thing we need to determine is the width of the desired awning. Obviously the width is determined by your particular application. To determine the appropriate projection, the drop, and the depth of your particular awning, it's best to take a couple yardsticks and take them against the building with a helper to determine exactly what will look best for your particular application. Obviously the mounting position and the drop of your particular awning can vary. Once those measurements are determined, it's a good idea to sketch this all down on paper and write down each one of those measurements. For filming purposes, we've installed the frame to a plywood board with naugahyde cover. The head rod pipe is a 1/2-inch EMT pipe, while the struts and the front bar are 3/4-inch galvanized pipe. Here's a close-up of the head rod clamp. We also installed a swivel eye pulley for a rope system. The rope system makes it possible for you to pull up the awning in storms. Typically when I build my awnings, I do not use the rope system. I just simply use the hardware without the pulleys and line. If you choose to use the rope pulley system, you'll need a jam cleat as shown here. The 3/4-inch galvanized struts and the front bar are held in place with a slip-fit adjustable front bar fitting. As mentioned in the text, remember a 3/4-inch galvanized is the inside diameter. The actual outside diameter of a 3/4-inch galvanized pipe is 1 inch. To mount the struts to the wall, we used a slip-fit eye end. Then to attach the eye end, we used a jaw end with lag screw, or you could use a camelback hinge. Notice that each strut is a few inches away from the end of the pipe. That few inches of pipe sticking out away from the strut will actually hold the canvas cover at the end. You'll then determine what size to cut each pipe. Remember that the hardware, such as eye ends, will always make the pipe longer. We'll be using a reciprocating saw to cut the 3/4-inch galvanized pipe and also the EMT 1/2-inch pipe used for the head rod. You can also use a hacksaw, but as you see here in the video, a reciprocating saw works very well and is much faster. Here's a material list for just the frame hardware. Obviously, if your awning is much larger, you'll need more pipe and you'll also need more hardware. As you can see in the list, the jam cleat and the swivel eye pulley and the leech line are also included. That is, if you want to use a rope pulley system to pull your awning up in storms. The majority of homes that I've lived in have had awnings on them, and even in Florida I had traditional awnings like this on my home there. The only time that I would remove the awning is during a hurricane warning. Otherwise, I'd leave them up no matter what kind of storm was out there, so I typically do not recommend the rope pulley system. Even if you had the rope pulley system during a hurricane, the awning really should be removed, otherwise damage may happen. If you've wrote down all your measurements on a piece of paper, you can go by that in order to make the canopy cover and also cut the pipe. But we're going to go over those measurements as well by measuring the actual frame. We want to get a width measurement of the total length of pipe, which is here 57 inches. The head rod should be the same measurement as well, 57 inches here. Since we're using the rope system, we can use the rope to secure the tubing at its right angle. We want to make sure it's 90 degrees to the wall. And if it is, then we can just take our measurements directly off that by obviously tying up our rope on the cleat or the jam cleat so that it's the appropriate size. We've tied it there. When writing down your measurements, be sure you include for the opening of the hardware and rope if you have it. Notice that the hardware is at least a few inches from the end of the pipe, and also that you need at least 1 inch of fabric extending in over the end of the pipe. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in the video. These strings are made for not necessarily holding the awning, because the fabric will actually be what makes this awning taut, and the weight of the bar will make it taut because it's a fairly heavy bar. It's galvanized tubing. When, let's say, a storm comes up, or if you want light to come in, what you would do is release these strings and pull it up, and we'll show you that a little bit later as soon as I get my last measurement. This measurement will be for the length of the fabric, and we're going to take it all the way from the head rod and all the way down to the front of the awning here. So we're at 40 inches right here. We're going to go 40 and a quarter to make it come around to the front. So about 40 and a quarter. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement as long as our strut is fairly horizontal. This rope is only used to bring the awning up and to store it out of the way. So we'll release the rope from our cleat here, and then as you can see, you pull on the rope and the awning would fold up nicely and the fabric would be draped down here. Here's what the final project would look like by using that rope pulley system. Then once you want to extend the awning back out again, just release the ropes and it'll hold on the fabric, not the ropes, once we're done with the fabric, and we'll see that after the awning is made. Let's refer back to our drawing and the measurements we drew on the drawing and get started to build the canopy cover. Take note of your width measurement, projection measurement, and curtain measurement. To determine the size of our fabric, Blank will take the width measurement and add a ½ inch on each end for hems. Then to determine the length, we'll take the projection measurement, the curtain measurement, and add 2 inches. This will be the fabric length that we'll create out of our material. We're using a Sunbrella awning grade material. We recommend using Sunbrella marine grade or Sunbrella awning grade for awnings. Deb's drawing out the lines there to equal the fabric length that we need for our awning. Yours obviously will have different measurements. Just take a yardstick and mark the appropriate size on the fabric, then draw straight lines lining up those marks to be sure that it's straight. Deb uses a soapstone pencil and a regular number 2 pencil to mark the fabric. Obviously the soapstone pencil is used when she's marking on the blue lines to make it visible in the video. Once the fabric's marked to the appropriate size, it's wise to use a hot knife to cut the fabric. This seals the edges of the fabric to prevent unraveling. If you don't have a hot knife, you could use a wood-burning tool or a soldering gun.
We have this all cut out.
Let's concentrate on creating the 2-inch pocket for the top.
I'm going to go ahead and measure that in. You need to measure in and strike a line at 4 inches because we're going to fold that over to the line and that will be your 2-inch pocket inside there. And we'll go ahead and mark that first.
Deb's marking it to 4 inches. She'll fold it over to 2 inches and this will form the pocket for the head rod. By creating a line that's 4 inches away from the raw edge of the fabric, she can fold the raw edge of the fabric over and match it up to that line, and this will create a 2-inch pocket for the head rod insertion.
This is hot knife edge, so we don't have to worry about finishing it off because it'll be at the top where there's no wear.
Prior to creating the 2-inch sleeve at the top, we want to create a ½ hem on the 2 edges of the awning, not the front or the top. This whole fabric blank has been cut with a hot knife, so it will not unravel. We'll create this ½ hem on both edges of the awning. In Sailrite's loft, we have some large sewing machines, but this job can be easily done with the Sailrite Ultrafeed sewing machine or even a home sewing machine. We did not show sewing that ½ hem on the other side of the awning. Here we are sewing the 2-inch sleeve at the top of the awning.
Now we're making the top pocket for the hole for the rod to go in through with our finished ends from our hem. We're going to do a few back stitches at the beginning always.
Be sure to reverse the sewing machine at the beginning and the end to lock your stitch in place.
There's the finished top pocket.
Sunbrella marine grade and awning grade fabric does not have a right or wrong side, but obviously the hems make a right and wrong side.
Side up we want to have face down so that we can mark the back.
We'll be marking this back side to indicate where this sleeve for the front bar will go. To do this, measure down from the top and take your projection measurement minus 3½ inches and mark a line. Then measure down from the top the projection measurement and mark a line there as well. We'll be creating a 4-inch sleeve pocket that will go on top of those lines.
Okay, we'll make our first mark at 37, and then another one at 40 1/2.
These are the measurements for our particular awning. Obviously, you'd want to do the measurements for yours instead.
The other side, and we can strike our line across.
Again, we're measuring from the top of the awning where that 2-inch sleeve was created.
And these will be your edges that you will sew. Sit your pocket edge at to sew them on.
Going back to the frame here, this is the frame without the rope pulley system. We need to measure between those struts to determine what the opening should be for the sleeve. This is 49 inches. You should also measure how much pipe is extending past the strut. Our awning obviously has to allow 2 struts to enter into the sleeve. Based on the measurements that we took, we're going to create one sleeve that's 48 by 4 and 2 sleeves that are 2 by 4 when finished. Now the actual cut size will be a 1/2 inch larger on the width because we're going to create a 1/4 inch hem around the entire perimeter of the sleeve. We'll also be adding a 1/4 inch hem on the links as well, but we don't need to add it to the measurement.
The pockets so that they're 4.5 inches.
Alright, with some more fabric, we want to create that sleeve. She's marking it to 4.5 inches. It'll be hemmed on the edges, a 1/4 inch.
Okay, now we went ahead and went the whole width of this because when we put this onto the cover, we want to line up our striping here. So we're going to put a solid blue hinge here, and we'll put a solid lighter blue hinge here, and then we'll put our longer one to match the stripes going through it. So we need to find the center of this one.
We're finding the center of the awning so that we can position that larger sleeve pocket right in the center to allow for the struts to exit at the ends.
We want to go 48 inches between that. It's 24. It's the halfway of 48. That's what our pocket's going to finish.
For our awning, we measured an opening of 49 inches. We want that to be a little bit short, so we're measuring 48.
Here. And then we're going to put a 2-inch hinge just inside of this edge. Just inside of this edge.
There's no real hard, fast rules on how much opening you should leave. You just need enough opening to allow the hardware to exit without rubbing against the sleeve.
Now that we have that, you can lay your marked piece for your hinge here.
The reason Deb's laying this on top is so she can line up the stripes. If you had a solid, you wouldn't have to worry about this.
And we can line this up with our 48. 2-inch here.
We'll do that on the opposite end as well.
Okay.
Obviously, we do the same procedure to the other side. We'll not show that.
Okay, and then we'll go over and we'll hot knife these apart, and then we'll hem them.
You'll notice, as we discussed earlier, we didn't add any hem allowance for the length measurements. We're cutting those exactly to 2 inches and 48 inches. That's because we just need to allow enough opening for the hardware, and taking up a 1/4 inch is not going to make any difference at all. Now Deb's creating a 1/4 inch hem around the entire perimeter of the long sleeve, and she'll do that to the short sleeves as well, and also those ends, and she'll sew them up. Here she is sewing the 1/4 inch hem on those small sleeves that are used for the extension of the pipe off the end of the strut. So you want to do a 1/4 inch hem around all sides of the smaller pockets, and obviously the larger pocket as well. We'll not show the entire process.
have our finished edge hinges. And we can apply them in between our marks here. See, they are a little bit different, and we're going to push this back a 1/2 inch like this. The front one you want to sew at the line, and the back one you bring it up at the line, and see that creates a pocket for the pull.
We'll line up the sleeve with the bottom line that's closest to the curtain, and then sew right on top of those stitches we sewed previously for the 1/4 inch hem. Be sure to reverse the sewing machine to lock your stitch at the beginning and the end of your stitches. Deb does sew through the opening for where that strut will be positioned, and that's really not necessary. You could just start it right on top of the sleeve. Notice she's being careful to line up that sleeve along that line so that it's nice and straight. Notice how all of the stripes are lined up as well. That's perfect. Let's skip ahead and show sewing the opposite side. Now on the opposite side of the sleeve, you'll notice that Deb is actually having to push the sleeve down so that it creates a slight bubble. That helps the pipe to lay nice and neat. Should do that obviously with the long sleeve as well. Again, she sews through this opening here without any fabric. You don't have to do that. Reverse at the beginning and also reverse at the end as mentioned earlier. Alright, line it up with the line and sew all the way down its length. Alright, we're done with that. She's just trimming off some excess threads.
Okay, you can put any kind of edge on it that you want, that you prefer to put on your own. We just kind of made up our own edging and made a template out of it. You can make a shorter one and then just mark your centers and just keep moving it down as you go.
Deb will simply just trace around this template that she made. Typically, you would make a template with about 3 scallops rather than a long one like this, but this obviously makes her job a little bit easier because she makes the template once and then uses it on many projects. Notice that Deb's going between the soapstone pencil and the regular pencil. That's only for the video. You don't need to do that. She's trying to make the line show up.
Just cut this out.
I prefer to use a hot knife when cutting the scalloped edges. That way, if your stitch for the binding is close to the edge, it helps to maintain the stitch and keep it solid.
Acrylic binding has a tendency to widen and real fray at the end. So what I like to do is just pull it taut and take some back stitches back and forth on it. Okay, it kind of gathers it together, and then you can just cut that off. That'll make it narrower, and then you can tuck your end under. This will pull tight, and then you have a finished.
This soft acrylic binding is really the best kind of binding to use for a scalloped edge because it is very pliable.
You want to kind of pull it taut. You can kind of see a center that folds in half, and you want to just kind of pinch it. Some back stitches at the beginning. And the shorter distance that you go, the easier it is to hold it up. You can actually feel the umbrella inside the edge.
If you did not use the soft acrylic binding, you would likely find that the binding has to obviously shrink when it's going around a curve, and so it creates a hard spot. The soft acrylic binding does not do that. However, the soft acrylic binding cannot be fed through a binder attachment well. It's way too soft, so you have to almost do this binding by hand. That's the only difficult part. It does take some labor, and it can be done. It's not too hard, just as long as you go slow.
The longer you make your curves, the easier it is to get into.
We're using a straight stitch sewing machine. We really highly recommend that you sew this binding on with a zigzag machine if you have it. We're going to fast forward here and show it in triple time. There are other soft bindings out there on the market. However, you want to use the one that's made out of an acrylic. It'll last longest in the sun than any other. Nylon will do poorly, polyester will do okay, acrylic will do great. The sewing is all complete. Now we just need to disassemble that strut from the front bar, and if you've used the rope pulley system, remove that as well and install your canvas canopy. Once it's through that main portion of the sleeve, then you need to install the rope pulley system, if you have that, and then the strut. Then we'll force the front bar through the rest of the sleeve at the end. Okay, before we tighten everything back down again, we need to do the same procedure to this opposite end. There we go. When you're happy with the position, then lock the nut on the bottom of the slip fit adjustable front bar fitting. Do that to all the struts. Then we'll release the head rod. This is the 1/2 inch EMT that we've inserted into the head rod clamp into the sleeve at the top of the awning. Once it's inside the sleeve, then we just simply take it over to the head rod clamp, release the thumb screw, which releases the finger, position the finger over the head rod, and tighten the thumb screw. Your awning is now complete. This umbrella awning material will guarantee to have bright, beautiful colors for years and years because it's 100% solution dyed acrylic. This awning looks great, and it should be fairly easy to build. You'll notice from the underside that our rope pulley lines are fairly slack. The only time they are used is when you're pulling up the awning and securing it. We'll show you that next. If you chose to put the rope pulley system in, you would release the line from the jam cleat and then just simply pull on both lines and it would fold the awning up. As I mentioned earlier, I typically don't use the rope pulley system, but if you want to use it, this is exactly what you'll get. For more awning tips and hardware and fabric, visit Sailrite.com. I'm Eric Grant with Sailrite. Thanks for watching this video.